Hello everyone, Michael the Librarian of Magic here, finding and cataloging the magical and pointing you to it. Today is October the 17th, and I have another villain drawing in Season 3 of a Draw a Villain a Day for the month of October series. Another Halloween treat ready to go, and I hope you enjoy this one. Today's drawing was a fun one to draw, and one that was kind of... I don't know what inspired me to think of it, but these are Heffalumps and Woozles from The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, specifically the short Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day. And that there were a bunch of Winnie the Pooh shorts made in the late 60s, early 70s that were then eventually compiled into the feature film The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh in like 1977, I want to say. These characters, the Heffalumps and Woozles, originally appeared in A.A. Milne's original Winnie the Pooh book. The way that it works out in the Disney short is essentially Tigger encounters Pooh and tells him he needs to be wary of the Heffalumps and Woozles. They'll try to come and steal his honey. And Winnie the Pooh is trying to stay awake to guard his honey, but he falls asleep and ends up having a nightmare where the Heffalumps and Woozles show up and they guzzle up his honey, and there's a really fun song, and it's really creepy because it's like a creepy nightmare sequence. Heffalumps and Woozles are really, if you look at the imagery, you could tell pretty much, are elephants and weasels. Heffalumps and Woozles are the words for elephant and weasel in Tigger speak, Tiggerese. So you can, by looking at the drawing, you can tell, hopefully you can tell from my drawing, which one's supposed to be a Heffalump and which one is supposed to be a Woozle. This is another one kind of like the Cheshire Cat, where you could probably debate whether or not they're actually villains, given the fact that there are later versions of these characters that were used in things like House of Mouse and stuff like that aren't really villainous at all. In fact, they're pretty much just good guys or neutral. But specifically in the context of Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day, I think it's pretty clear that they're villainous. They're basically nightmare creatures. They're smiley and they're happy, but they're happy because they're guzzling up all of Pooh's honey, which is their goal. But also, they're scary. I mean, look at the image here. The image I drew is straight from a still from the short, so it's pretty scary. It also is a sequence that's pretty similar to Pink Elephants on Parade from Dumbo, where Dumbo actually gets drunk and has a dream sequence of his own, or a vision of his own, and that's also pretty scary. Probably scarier than Heffalumps and Woozles, depending on what scares you. But yeah, it's just a cool sequence. I've always liked it. It was drawn and directed and designed and everything by several of the Nine Old Men. It was directed by Wolfgang Reitherman. Milt Kahl also worked on it, as well as Ollie Johnston and Frank Thomas, who I've talked about several times before. This short, Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day, was the last short that Walt ever personally had any sort of involvement on. He passed away before it was done, but he worked on some of the conceptions of it in pre-production. So as a result, it was the last thing that he had any sort of input on, but it was also the completion of the project was the first full animation project without Walt, which is why they also brought on this team of the Nine Old Men to direct and craft it. It just felt right for the studio to bring those guys together to work on the very first project after Walt's passing. And they really knocked it out of the park. In fact, they won an Academy Award in 1968 for Best Animated Short Film, and that award was posthumously given to Walt Disney. So, yeah, they won an Academy Award for their efforts. The song, Heffalumps and Woozles, was written by the Sherman brothers, Richard and Robert Sherman, who were a very famous songwriting team. I don't know if I've gotten a chance to talk very much about them before or not. and I will here in just a minute. The song was performed in the film by the Mellow Men, who I have talked a little bit about before in past videos when I got to talk about the career of Thurl Ravenscroft, who was one of the founding members of the Mellow Men. And they were like a backup vocal group for a lot of famous acts in the 40s and 50s, like Bing Crosby and the Rosemary Clooney and Elvis Presley and so on. And then they did a bunch of things for Disney as well, including a lot of songs in the Disneyland attractions like Grim Grinning Ghosts and Yo-Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me, and so on. You could do a whole series on the Mellow Men alone. They did a lot of stuff, and they did a lot of really cool work, including singing Heffalumps and Woozles for this short film. As I said before, the song was written by Richard and Robert Sherman, and they basically have written more motion picture musical song scores than any other songwriting duo in film history. They were repeatedly used by Disney. They were involved in a bunch of other projects. It is, if you've watched any American films in your life, if you grew up with Disney at all, or children's films from the 60s, 70s, 80s, that kind of stuff, it is practically impossible that you've never heard the work of the Sherman Brothers in one way or another. Even if you haven't seen any of those films, just through cultural osmosis, they wrote It's a Small World, the music for It's a Small World. Everyone conceivably knows that. So their work has touched just about everybody. You would have to be you would have to have grown up or whatever in pretty relative isolation to not know who the Sherman Brothers are. And it's possible, but most people probably know. They wrote the score and songs for Mary Poppins, for which they won a couple of Oscars for their work on Mary Poppins. They wrote the music for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. They wrote all the songs for The Jungle Book, with the exception of The Bare Necessities. That one song was not written by them. They wrote the music for Bedknobs and Broomsticks, The Happiest Millionaire, the animated Charlotte's Web, The Aristocats. As I said before, It's a Small World. In other Disney attractions, they also wrote the music for The Enchanted Tiki Room. They wrote, Tiki 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 Room. They wrote There's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow for the Carousel of Progress, and just on and on. They wrote so many memorable songs and scores, and their music is just wonderful. Their partnership and their relationship was wonderful. They're just a great duo. I believe Dick Sherman, Richard Sherman is still with us, but Robert Sherman is not, unfortunately. But yeah, their career is just legendary, and they are Disney legends. They've been honored in every conceivable way, winning pretty much every musical award you can. They're official Disney legends. There's a window on the main street of Disneyland that specifically honors the Sherman Brothers. They're just, you can't say enough about them, and you could, again, do a whole detailed video in and of itself for the Sherman Brothers. And so, yeah, that's kind of how this segment came to life. It's basically the song and the nightmare sequence and a lot of cool imagery by those famous group of animators that I mentioned before. And yeah, it's pretty spooky and scary. It's Pooh's nightmare. They're trying to come and guzzle up all of his honey, and he's trying to protect it. So that is Heffalumps and Woozles. I thought it was kind of a cool, random, left field choice to make, and just one that kind of struck me as something cool to do. So I hope you enjoyed the drawing. It was really fun to make, and I hope that you enjoyed learning a little bit about the Sherman Brothers and mentions of the Mellow Men and some of the stuff about Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day, and how that kind of sort of came to be. So thanks as always for watching these. I hope it was entertaining and informative, and I will be coming back tomorrow with another one of these. Please join me then and every day for the rest of October as I finish off this Draw a Villain a Day series for the 3rd season. Thanks again. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.